We have with us today Dr. Nicole Neuschler. She is currently practicing out of Cherry Creek, but has a long and impressive career, not only practicing dermatology, but also teaching other practitioners, and has become the thought leader in her space. So super excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming, joining us in our new office. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Likewise. And what of you?
We feel very fortunate. This is our new space and we are loving it. It feels like a very happy place to come. People are happy to be here.
Definitely. Great natural light. Can't beat the background. I mean,
yes.
You've won the office space category, that's for sure.
I sort of feel like we've upgraded along the years, and I figure I spend more time here than I do in my home, so it might as well be nice.
Yeah, awesome. Well deserved from what I've heard with all the great patient care stories.
Thank you.
Excited to dig into that a little later.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of like what inspired you to get into dermatology in the first place?
Well, when I went to medical school, I decided that I wanted to do something where I could use my sort of artistic skills. And I've always been into art, but also I feel like I'm very visual. As I was going through medical school, I was looking at the different specialties and deciding sort of, did I want to have to use a lot of tests to help diagnose someone, or do I choose a field where I actually can use my eyes to help diagnose? And interestingly, I do have a twin and she's a radiologist, so we both decided to do very visual fields. And so I was fortunate enough to work with a physician at Northwestern and work in her lab before I was even considering dermatology, and she is an extremely inspiring pediatric dermatologist. So it was hard not to get excited. And then I was very fortunate to match in dermatology, which, you know, is sometimes can be hard to do. And I feel fortunate that it happened. I talk all day long about how it's an art and a science. And part of why I think I like it so much is that I can look at the patient and take so much in just from seeing them the first time and evaluating them. And I can find a needle in a haystack or a little mole. I can find very tiny things. And I think that's because I do enjoy, you know, art and visual aspects. And that's why I thought dermatology would be good for me.
That makes sense. And I mean, looking at the reviews and kind of like what your patients are saying about you, I mean, it seems like you've truly found your calling, and maybe even kind of the passion for patient care kind of percolates into that attention to detail.
Yes. And that's what we talk about a lot, actually, is when I find something that was small and unsuspecting to the patient, they then literally, they will have their friends come and their friends will say, I'm coming because you found this minuscule melanoma. So yes, I have fun with my patients. I enjoy seeing them. We chat, but I'm also, you know, I feel like I have a great ability to find things that are important, but also be evaluating the patient, talking with them, you know, having fun with them, but also, you know, seeing them from afar and then up close. I have a third eye, and that's my dermatoscope, and I spend a lot of time with my dermatoscope. I cannot walk into a room without it, but it is amazing how much there is an art to dermatology specifically. Sometimes people wonder, how did you see that? And well, it's because my eye is used to seeing things, and sometimes it's like, where's Waldo a little bit, but my eye is trained to look for that on the body. So it's fun for me. And it's also, of course, super important that I can find, you know, skin cancers and melanoma. And that's the majority of what I do in our practice is general dermatology. Of course, I do inflammatory disorders too, but definitely skin cancer. I'm on the skin cancer hunt.
Well, super important too, because I mean, as I understand it, like early detection is so key.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you know, even maybe another practitioner who's not as passionate or detail oriented, who's running through a ton of patients quickly, like could miss something that like is easy to miss, but critical not to miss.
Yes, I have been known to have some significant attention to detail. Maybe it means also walking into a room and adjusting the frame on the wall, but at the same time, I think it helps me in this case. I feel like my attention to detail in both my personal life as well as at the office is helpful for my patients and how I can sleep at night. I mean, I say that often to patients. If we're trying to decide between what to biopsy and what not, and they're like, well, why this one? And sometimes I say, if I don't take it off, I'm going to have trouble sleeping tonight. So I want to do the best by you.
And that makes sense. Better safe than sorry, especially with things like that. I mean, can get super serious, super fast, and like
exactly
so tragic. The stories you hear about something that was completely avoidable that like was ignored or, you know, not caught. And then, you know, just.
Exactly. Earlier, the better.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So part of this, or kind of the intention behind this, is to get advice from people who have been in the industry for a little while, for people who are maybe just getting in the industry, perhaps medical students who are not quite even in their career, but like they know that they have a long journey ahead of them. I know that today in the macroeconomic climate that we're facing, I mean, operating any business is becoming more difficult. Like your utilities are more expensive, your rent is more expensive. There's all kinds of disruption with technology. What would you say is the key to kind of like maintaining the health of a practice, or, just from a business standpoint?
From a business standpoint, the most important thing is to build your reputation and have patients, who are looking to come all the time. And I think that was the one value of how we set up this practice, was that the three of us that are the main people involved, we were at separate practices before, so we were fortunate enough to bring our own patients. And I've had patients who've followed me from starting in Kaiser in 2008 until now, if they've changed insurances. So we not only had a cadre of our own patients, but then we get their friends, we get their family. We have very good referral source, because despite the expense of everything, which you're correct, everything has gone up. If you can find the joy in seeing patients and your patients see that in you, you will have a constant stream of patients. So no matter what, that is the key. And we're fortunate to be in Denver, obviously, where there's a plethora of patients available, as well as always moving to town. There are things I can negotiate, and there are things I can spend time on to say, okay, is this the process? Is this the best system? Is there a way to get, staff in it, remotely working for us? Is there a way to get suture at less cost? But getting patients in almost an inorganic way, inorganic being from other providers, from friends, from family. We thankfully haven't had to put up ads. And if you have to, great. But we haven't had to spend a lot of money on that. That's a cost savings in itself, but that's because we've really prided ourselves on, being practitioners that are approachable, thorough, and have good access. So not only having a good source of patients, but being accessible to your patients. In medicine in general, getting into a provider is very hard, of any specialty, accessing them. So we have a texting platform. We have obviously staff that are, very aware of if someone is calling with something urgent, that we need to know about it. And we really pride ourselves on that. And in the age of technology, which of course is an expense, but if you harness that technology to allow you to access the patients quickly and they can access you when they need you, that honestly, I think is one of the best things you can do.
That makes sense. And it kind of fits in with the mantra of patient care, right? I mean, patient care is not just what happened in the office. It's like the total experience, the questions they have. And from what we heard talking to other providers, it can kind of be a little bit of a nightmare sometimes on like, if you don't really think through the communication channels and the efficiency levers, you're playing phone tag, you're kind of limited in what you can do because you're only operating, so many hours a day, you have so many calls, your staff has so many things to do.
Correct.
And so we've heard that oftentimes one thing that many do is they try to simplify the prescription process because a lot of those questions are about medications, right? And so it's not just about making sure that the medications that you're prescribing are going to not leave someone with a lot of questions.
Correct.
But also maybe even kind of like thinking through the different channels of questions, maybe even getting like some secondary support answer some of those basic informational questions that...
Yes. I mean, the time that is spent after the visit dealing with prescriptions that we have to send out, when you quantify it, it's more than you want to realize. And also you want to get the best for your patient. And so, I mean, honestly, if you can have a patient walk out with the prescription, and I mean with the actual compound or prescription you're prescribing, we don't have to have a back and forth. We don't have to be texting saying your prior authorization didn't go through, or, we expected it to be this amount. I spent this whole time explaining to you why I like this mechanism of action and what you want, and now you can't get it, which is disappointing. I like them to know why they're getting what they're getting, and if they don't, then it feels sometimes like a loss for both myself, and then it's more time for my staff we could be working on something else. I umpteen things. we could be working on. But yes, I think that is a piece of the practice that if we can streamline it, and anything we can do to make that better is going to make everyone's life better. Mine, the staff, the patient. Ultimately, they're the most important in this process, but I also don't want my staff to be doing unnecessary tasks if there's a way to circumvent that.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like that approach is really kind of attacking it from every imaginable angle, because, I mean, in one hand, you're giving better patient care because they're getting exactly what you intended them to get.
Correct. Yeah.
On the other hand, oftentimes saving money if it's coming in lower than a copay, or like, kind of the sliding scale of like, maybe it's not covered this time and that just completely blows the average.
Right. Yes.
And then, for your staff, like the efficiency of just like not chasing things around, I think that even bleeds into the patient experience, right? Because
exactly.
they're having to do the same thing. Well, it's not, I mean, some could argue time is money regardless of who you are.
Correct. Yes, exactly. I think whoever that is, I mean, I don't begrudge anyone who doesn't want to spend time on something like that, right? We want to meet in the office, and we want to, I want the patient to have what they want. They want to have what they want, and I'm sure they have children, office, pets, whatever it may do that they need to get to, that I'm interfering with if they can't get what they need in a timely fashion. Not to mention their disease state getting better.
Yeah.
Only that little piece.
Top of mind motivation.
Right, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
But
there's that too.
It's awesome how it all just kind of is interconnected when you're focused on patient care. And I think like more broadly in any industry, if you really prioritize like customer experience, the rest of it works itself out.
Correct.
Granted,
but I totally agree with you. I am 100% in agreement. I mean, I feel like that's something I've tried to understand and master, and I've always felt like I had a good ability to immediately connect with people. I noticed that when I rushed for a sorority at Northwestern, I was like, oh, I could do this. That little 3-minute chat, I got this down. But now, now it becomes, now I'm seeing patients I've seen since I moved here in 2008. Now I know all their families. So I do have a tendency to chat a little bit, but at the same time, like, that's what I want, new physicians or medical students, remember to invest in that new patient experience, because these may be people that are with you for decades. And then it will be, yes, is it hard sometimes when a patient comes in and has a list of things to get through? And yes, but if you invest in being kind, approachable, that experience, it is going to turn into years of time with this patient. And, I look forward to seeing patients. And sometimes when a patient probably could be moved to a year, I had this conversation with a woman earlier. I've seen her, probably for a decade now. And she probably could come every year, but she prefers 6 months. And I was like, well, I like to see you. She's like, yeah, I like to see you too. I want to see how Serena's doing.
I love that.
So she wants to hear how we're doing. And it's really fun, especially right now, because people are coming in and they get to see the new office. So that's really fun for them too. But yeah, so I just think investing, I can't say enough about investing in the patient experience, because that is what's going to be, there should be continuity of that. And that's what's going to keep people coming back. And that's what we talk about, at the main driver in your practice should be people returning.
Yeah. And again, reputation precedes you, right?
Well, we try.
I mean, I think 4.9 on
I know. I feel very lucky. We have a strong following, and but I also, it's not just me. Then one great thing is that I have 3 other providers that I know if one of them saw my patient, they'd be extremely happy as well. Dr. Frankel and I do primarily general dermatology. Dr. Contreras does cosmetics in general, and Dr. Pride does Mohs in general. And so we all refer to one another, and I feel so confident if I'm not there for one day and someone has to see my patient that, we're a really good team. So we feel lucky.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So patient care in the office, making sure that the patient experience outside of the office is important.
Yes.
Like, obviously, like, not always, but in many cases, like, medication is coming into this equation.
Of course, yes.
You've been an incredible partner to SKNV. Like, I think, like, you're someone who, in talking to you, like, really understands, like, the why behind what we're doing.
Yes.
Like, how would you say SKNV kind of fits into your philosophy about prioritizing patient care? And, like, maybe even more broadly, like, what kind of lens do you apply when you're kind of choosing the medications that you either bring into your office or are prescribing out?
Right. Well, I think the first lens is when I'm looking at the products that are available, and obviously we have a cadre that are available that we've chosen amongst the 4 providers. But when I'm looking to choose a new one, I'd be looking at how often is this something how frequently am I prescribing this? So that's number one. Like is this a condition for which I will constantly reach for this mechanism of action? If, let's say, the patient would benefit from a SKNV product, I'm going to choose that one because 1, I know exactly what they're getting. 2, I know it's for sensitive skin. 3, I've used them myself. I've used them. My daughters use them. I can vouch for them. They're such an elegant vehicle. And generally, unless our inventory with some of them just fly off the shelf, like our Retin-As, which are amazing, or your Retin-As, SKNVs,
Ours.
Yeah, exactly. The world's, with the moisturizing tretinoin, those just fly off. So occasionally, they can't walk out with it, but we know where we can get it. Obviously, it can be delivered. We can, send it to your pharmacy and be delivered. But we know they're getting what they need right then and there. So I think, when I'm prioritizing what's coming into the office, I think, of course, it's just how broadly will I be using this? Will it be helpful for all 4 providers? We want to choose one that most of us could use. So it does take a little bit more thought, than it would be if I'm buying a sunscreen product or something like that. But it's just so nice to know that it's a product I can trust and I know exactly what they're getting.
Well, that makes sense. And then, kind of to your point earlier, oftentimes also making sure that you understand the experience that they're getting, right? They're not going to go and then all of a sudden it's a different medication.
Of course, that is, and you're right. That's on the, so they walk out with it and then we shouldn't have to deal with any back end stuff. So no calls, from the pharmacy, no calls to us when the pharmacy doesn't have it. I have a woman that I'm seeing shortly after this. I don't normally work today, but I'm seeing her because I knew I'd be here because she needed a prescription over the weekend and they didn't have it over the weekend. So obviously we weren't here and she needed it emergently and they didn't have it at the pharmacy. So she called and, she's very concerned. And so I said, well, why don't you just come in today? And perhaps I actually might have the exact same thing she needs. But over the weekend, I was doing it sort of urgently to help her, but they couldn't fill it until Monday. So that was disheartening. Obviously, there's only so much you can do, but sometimes, we prescribe something and it could be weeks before someone gets, something correct. If it's available in my armamentarium of compounded things, I will always choose it.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. We've heard from other prescribers sometimes that the other advantage to patients is that because we blend multiple active ingredients into certain medications, like it can save the patient even more money in that they need 1 instead of 3, and like the size is bigger than some of the other.
Yes, exactly. And I saw a woman about 2 weeks ago. It was has new onset rosacea, and she wasn't here. It was Telederm, this is great because even if I don't have it in my practice or the patient isn't physically here and they can't walk out with it, there's a whole book of your products. And I was super excited when I turned to rosacea, and I didn't even know that one of the active ingredients was brimonidine in one of the rosacea medicines. And I was thrilled because here I just was talking to her about different options for the redness, but I wanted her to treat the redness and the inflammatory component. And then I looked and there it was all in one compound. So I was thrilled. I think she saw the excitement on my face when I was like, oh, it's right here.
Exactly.
Exactly. And she's going to be back in a month from college. So she's just, I know we'll probably just ship it home because she's coming home, but I knew she would get exactly what she needed. Instead of also, when you think about that, I love all the ingredients. I know why they work and how they work, but that would be like, some of these would be 3 to 4 different prescriptions. And that, when you think about the cost and perhaps would they even get it? And now it's in one elegant vehicle. And once a day I find for most topical medications, if it can be once daily, it's a home run.
A lot easier for adherence.
Yes. And one of the very early things we learned in medical school is if someone comes back and it's not getting better, ask them if they're using the medicine.
Which, statistically speaking,
is low.
Yeah, really kind of a coin toss.
Especially with teenagers. But maybe not now. Skincare is a booming.
It is becoming very in vogue.
Yes,
from what I've gathered.
Very, very in vogue. And yes, I will not bring my daughter into this yet, but that's a subject for another podcast. But yes, it's very in vogue. So maybe they will start to adhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's our hope.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? They are getting really good about at least wearing daily moisturizer with sunscreen. And I think that is something that I used to have to counsel people about of all ages, probably 10 or 15 years ago. But now living at this altitude with this beautiful sun, it's rare, in fact, that people aren't wearing a daily moisturizer with sunscreen. So I'm kudos to marketing.
Love that.
Right.
That reminds me of something that we chatted about the first time we spoke, which is kind of some tips as we have to acknowledge that like summer is not the only time that you need to be cognizant of skin protection. Yes. But you had some great advice as we're going into summer. People are in even more dangerous climates. And you even knew about a new product that apparently can help stop oxidation.
Right. With sunscreen, I try to encourage the patient to find something they like. And I always say, and this is kind of cliche because other derms say it, but the best sunscreen is the one you wear. So I think number one is, put your facial moisturizer by your toothbrush and just use it every morning. And then two, for reapplication, just find the vehicle that you like the best. So if you're hiking, it might be a spray. If you're, swimming, it might be you put on a base layer and then, use a spray. I am very fair, as you can see here. I rely on sun protective clothing in addition to sunscreen. So, and I think sometimes people in Colorado forget because they're so used to the sun. They also forget about wearing sunglasses. I see a lot of people not wearing sunglasses. And I also read an article this morning about tips to prevent dementia, and one of them is to wear sunglasses. So hats, sunglasses, sun protective clothing, and then HelioCare is the product that is actually a naturally derived fern that decreases the oxidation you're getting from the environment. And so here, I actually, when I'm having a conversation like this with a patient, they'll say, "Okay, I'm wearing sunscreen, I'm wearing hats, I'm wearing my sunglasses, and I'm wearing sun protective clothing. What else?" And that's when I say, well, there's a vitamin, and especially people that are as fair as I am, I say it's worth it. And, there's no harm to it. It's just, do you want to add another medicine or vitamin to your, morning regimen? One little vitamin, two little things.
They add up, but I would say in that case, worth it.
They do. This is definitely worth it. And so I think, and that's, I think, as we know, sunscreen, sun care and skin care is just abounding. So as long as it's SPF 30 plus, and then you reapply every 1 to 2 hours, UVA, UVB, you can choose your vehicle. It can be anything from a gel to a spray to a cream. I'll take any mineral sunscreen anyone has to offer because I'm the only one that will use it, but I'm a good repository for that.
People need to follow your example,
yes.
Though. Like they don't realize how serious it is.
Yes. I sometimes I'm still shocked when we're in the mountains, especially, and the degree of just when I see, burns on the ski slope, it's just, it's hard for me sometimes, but I do, I just wish I was carrying, I wish I just had some sort of, people could just stop by my helmet and take some sunscreen. Maybe someday in the spring, I'll ski with one on my head,
That's a viral video waiting to happen.
I was at Breckenridge just this weekend, but people have gotten a lot better. It's clearly significantly better, but with our high altitude, the reflection off the snow, and we just have to be extra cautious. So
makes sense. I think it's fortunately becoming more common knowledge, but yes. 5 years ago, probably a lot.
Oh yeah. I think it's definitely on the up and up, as we say.
Awesome.
Yes.
So we've got kind of tips for sun. What other general tips? Maybe are there certain things that people aren't aware of that maybe they shouldn't be putting on their skin, or they're dietary things that people should consider? Any other things that come to mind in that?
Dry skin is a huge issue here in Denver. So that's something we talk about all the time. And people think that they get enough hydration just from this. But one of the main things that makes our skin sensitive is that your skin is too dry, and actually the skin barrier is weakened by the dryness, and it allows irritants in. And so one of the nice things one I like about SKNV is because I can be, especially with people who have rosacea or eczema, which are a lot of the products we use, for inflammatory disorders from SKNV, I know that's not going to be irritating to their skin, because a lot of patients, I look at their skin and I have to educate them on hydration, and I have to educate them on moisturizer, because I'm concerned if the product that I give them is going to cause more irritation. So I think moisturizing has come a long way, maybe not as far as sunscreen, despite the number of moisturizers on the market. So I see a lot of just common dry skin, and people, and they say they moisturize, but at the same time, it's sort of a riverbed of, they call it a riverbed of dryness, for example, on their shin. So I think, that sort of seems to be common knowledge, but at the same time, I think that they don't realize the health that they will give to their skin by putting moisturizer on it. And so not only is it going to make whatever their condition is better, so whether it's psoriasis, rosacea, eczema, acne, even it's an odd thing. During COVID, a ton of people moved here. So, literally, I had people step off the plane and the next day they were in my office. People who were just working here remotely from New York, and their acne would flare. But they were like, I don't understand, because it's drier here. So you automatically think acne would be dried out. Like the actual acneiform lesions wouldn't do well on our dry skin. But what happens is it's an aberrant, and I saw it in practice. Sometimes I don't think I recognized that this was the case until I was here for a very long time, because I was in Chicago, Michigan, then New York, so all significantly more humid places. And people would say, I moved from New York, I moved from Florida, and why is my acne breaking out? And it's because the skin is trying to make oil. So sometimes people didn't want to moisturize because they were worried they were going to intensify the oil, but in fact it was, you needed to moisturize to allow your skin to recognize that it didn't need to create as much aberrant oil. So it's something that we don't always think about, and is sort of counterintuitive to most people. But I think, I talk about moisturizing a lot all day, and of course sunscreen is important, but if you're not protecting your skin barrier, you're going to also set up for other issues. That's probably the most common thing I spend time on, is moisturizing, sunscreen. And then I educate all day long about kind of what to look for. I mean, in a new patient, how I start my visit is by looking at their scalp, and I go through the ABCDs, asymmetry, border, color, difference, or I say dynamic evolution, E for evolution. And so that is how we start our conversation. And once I've gone through that, then I can move on to the other things we're talking about. But it's very hard for me to leave a room with a new patient without at least kind of educating them on what to look for, because I feel like my eyes are important, but a month later, someone could develop something, and then I want them calling my office and saying, I need to get in ASAP. And they can then, because our texting allows them to text us, and then they get in.
Well, it's not surprising. Because you can tell that you're patient care is a passion beyond the job for you. It literally is like a calling, I can tell. And that just percolates through everything that we've heard from you and seen. And it's just awesome to see that, because I think that is something that in the medical industry, unfortunately, is becoming a little less common, and almost not on purpose, right? It's just kind of the nature of all the pressure on the system, all of the volume of patients. If you're good at what you do, everybody wants to see you.
Yes. And I think there's just a lot of burnout, unfortunately. There's so many pressures between the amount of, the financial piece and then the burdensome nature of the EHRs and things like that. But AI should be helping with that at least. So I'm excited. I'm the one in the practice who's looking at all the different ways to leverage technology and things like that. So I've tried out a few here and there, and I'm hoping to start doing more of that, because as much as we can leverage AI in a safe way, we probably should be doing it. If I can be in there enjoying seeing my patient and not having to think, I'm going to have 2 hours of charting at the end of the day, I'm a lot more happy knowing that I'm not going to be spending the latter half of my evening doing work. The fun part is seeing the patients. And if I can do that and then, go home and be able to be with my daughter and dogs and her family, I'm happy. So I think that is the one thing that I think hopefully is really not that far away, in the future, is that AI can help physicians, gravitate away from their computers, and we have our assistants help us scribe, so I don't have to have an iPad in front of me, which is, I think, part of what makes it easier. And I'm more able to just have a conversation while I'm doing it, but not everyone has that luxury. That's not the tools they're given, because we own the practice, we get to make that decision. So
no, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, not only increasing the efficiency, like less time wasted on things that don't need to be like a human input anymore.
Exactly, correct.
And then beyond that, more time for what matters, right? Like the less time you're spending on that, the more time you have for helping your patients.
Right, exactly. And I can see more patients when I know it's not going to end up in hours of charting. I mean, sometimes we have to think about, do I want to add 5 more patients into my day? And what goes into that is my time plus also my staff's time, their time documenting, my time documenting. And so it's a ripple effect. But if there are things that we can cut down along the way, that will allow me to see more patients. And that's a win-win for everyone. I mean, ultimately, that goes back to our very beginning of the conversation. The more patients you can see in a timely manner, but not shorting them their time that's needed, but the more patients you can see, everything trickles down from that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you say sustainable, but like to your point, like cannot be at the expense of patient care.
Correct. Exactly.
So, delicate balance.
Yes, it is.
But respectable that you're
well, we've been at this for a while.
But I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily a precursor for success.
I know, but I do feel like, I joke because, a lot of what I tell my patients, they're little benign thickenings that come are wisdom spots and come with the passage of time. But now I actually believe in some wisdom. You kind of joke with your parents and that they know more. And it is true. They definitely do more. So I do say to patients, no, I actually feel like what this number of years has allowed me to overcome some things that were difficult in the beginning, but the hard part is not, generally at this point, the hard part is not the medicine, thankfully. And we're in an age where so many new tools are at our disposal. So medicines, technology. And so that's just making that delivery part even hopefully easier. But the hard part's probably the financial future of medicine. But at the same time, if I enjoy what I'm doing and coming here, I do believe there is wisdom and experience. And like you said, it's probably not the case for everyone. But for me, I feel that because I can walk into a room and think, this is no problem. But that would have been a big deal my first year out of residency. At Cornell, when I was overseeing residents and I was an attending physician, I didn't have residents with me every day, but I was on my own. I would have potentially sometimes even been like temporarily debilitated if I heard a person had a list of 20 things. And now it's like, that's
that it?
Problem. Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm like, is that it? I know exactly. And now, so my patients, we just look at the list and we make sure but generally because of the way and the systematic way in which I'm evaluating them, a lot of times I will have already attended to whatever it was. But it just comes with experience. I think mastering the medicine, which, doesn't happen right away. You have to be in it, doing it, that mastering the medicine. And then comes, just your comfort with patients. And then comes like, oh, this is, I got this. So it's nice to say to my staff, don't worry, I got this.
Yeah.
Because if I'm at ease, then they're at ease. And if they're at ease, it's so much better for everyone. And then the patient's at ease, because if I look comfortable, my staff looks comfortable, then they're comfortable.
You're setting the tone.
I'm trying.
I think you touched on something really important, which is kind of like the knowledge of the medications, right? And one frustration we've heard from other prescribers is that like sometimes with traditional pharmaceutical offerings, it's kind of one size fits all.
Correct.
Right? It's like, okay, here is a nuclear option that's going to work for everybody, but if you're maybe trying to be cognizant of sensitive skin or skin barrier, having the flexibility to dial it in really gives you that autonomy of care that allows you to deliver better patient experience.
It's awesome. I mean, hair loss is a huge thing we take care of, and it got accentuated during COVID when people were losing hair because of COVID, losing hair because of the stress of COVID. There isn't a day goes by that I don't talk about hair loss. And there were days, like many days 10 years ago, or week would go by. But I also think that's the recognition of people knowing that there's actually treatment for it. So that's good too. I mean, we want to be able to help, but we also want people to know that it's available. So we have the options of using oral medications or topical, and SKNV has a whole array of different topical medications for alopecia. And sometimes I will say to the patient, like after seeing them, I'm going to look at the different, ones that are available, and I'm going to decide based upon looking at your scalp, and I'm going to decide the percentage, and you have options. So some I might put a retin-A in, or if someone looks extra, or tretinoin, if someone looks extra dry, I might not put a tretinoin in with their minoxidil or their finasteride. And so it's customized to them. And, it's a vehicle I know that I can trust them using because I've also used it myself. So patients also know that I think people can see me thinking. They're like, you're thinking, aren't you? I'm like, oh, my staff, I'll just be, walking, and they're like, you're thinking about something. I'm like, this brain does not stop. But patients have literally said, like, I know you are taking the time to think about what you're doing. If it's one they can't walk out with, they appreciate that I take that extra, maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour if I'm doing a lit search for them. But people always tell me later that they appreciated that I took that extra time instead of just, like you said, the nuclear that works for everyone, because it's just not putting, a square peg into a circle hole. It just doesn't work. I mean, luckily we're in the age of new medicines, which is really exciting. So we have new medicines, and of course I have those to use, but the value of SKNV is that there are medicines that, well, one, always new ones are being added, but two, some of them are traditional ones, but they're combined, and you have two different mechanisms of action in one. And that's a real selling point, because why use one traditional if I could use a couple that are combined and can be, for example, when I talk about acne, I'll explain to my patients, there's clogging of the pores, there's inflammation, there's bacteria. And so if you're able to use one product, and you can explain to them why that one product works on each of the derivation of the acne in each part, people really respond to hearing about the mechanism. And I don't know, maybe that's just lip service for me, but they seem excited. I'm excited. I don't know. They seem to respond well to that. It might be cheesy of me, but
I don't think so, because I think it's like the holistic experience too. It's not just that they are enamored by the fact that you're actually giving the attention to detail that is oftentimes absent these days in a medical practice. But I think it's also the fact that you're not creating downstream effects that are unnecessary, right? Like the skin barrier, like if you damage it, treating something, then perhaps another.
Right, exactly. So I think that's, these are just fine nuances, I think, that do come with the passage of time, but also having the right tools at your disposal.
So going back to your technology piece, at a high surface level, what would you say are the most exciting technologies that you see emerging right now in the space that you would share with peers? I know you kind of talked about the transcription thing.
Yeah, I think AI, and probably that's one of the biggest things I think that's going to be so helpful, just because it is very hard for any of us to capture completely what the patient says. And I think it's super important. I spend, and I know my colleagues spend, a fair amount of time, even after I've seen the patient with a scribe, there are still some pieces of what the patient said that are so valuable because you want to remember them for next time. And they might not be caught because we're trying to focus on what prescription is going, or, are they going to get it here? Are they going to get somewhere else? So sometimes there are just little nuances of the conversation that you may not get unless you have, a computer listening. And the other thing is, technology, I think, is getting better and better and better to streamline the patient experience prior to the appointment. We currently have a technology that's called Clara that integrates, and we have a way to send our patients paperwork ahead of time. And I obviously go to doctors myself and with my daughter, and there's varying levels of, yes, it's still paper, to you did this all before, and it flows directly into the EMR. So anything to make that is, more seamless for both the patient and the practice is key. I'm a big fan of genomics. I use a sticker biopsy test made by DermTalks, and I use that frequently in lieu of a biopsy, so I don't have to actually leave a biopsy scar. I'm very into, the skin check melanocytic nevi and looking, for melanoma. And so my tool that I use always is a dermatoscope, but my goal is, I call it my life to-do list, is to use dermoscopy, and then, for example, take a dermoscopy picture of everything that I use the sticker on, because I want to learn for myself. So I'm hoping also that there will be a trajectory of sort of dermatoscopic images where AI will be able to assess and help us further. So I think, anything we can do to streamline the patient check-in process and make it easier for them when they arrive so they're not sitting and we kill less trees. That's, of course, it's cliche, but I mean, I'm tired of having paper. And then prior authorization. So technology can be used there. And then at the bedside, it's AI potentially using them more for a scribe, using my dermatoscope, using genomics. I think genomics is coming fast and furious, and that is going to allow us to personalize medicine for people. And also there's a test, for example, for psoriasis that's called MindDX, which is where you can basically take this little tool and you put it on their psoriasis plaque, and then you send off this, what you took off the patient's skin, the sample, and then they tell you which biologic medicine is best for them. I mean, we'll probably see that for so many inflammatory disorders. Like, that will allow you to pick maybe from the get-go what medicine is for best. And that's already happening in other fields. I think they do that for some oral medicines. But I think technology is going to allow us to harness that and make it I think they call it theranostics, and things where it's therapeutics that are based upon the patient's genomic or genetic profile. There's a lot to come, and I want to be involved as much as I can. But sometimes it's at the expense of my time.
And it is scarce from what I've gathered.
Yes, but I enjoy it, and it's fun, and I'm hoping to also maybe start integrating into some clinical research. So now that we have this bigger office, if I can get the go-ahead and I can, we can do it. I think that's, because that's fun for me too, especially I've explained how much I love mechanisms. And if I could be involved in some of the early new tools, I'd be excited about it.
Does not surprise me. And I loved the way you described our mechanism. You said cosmetically elegant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny. Everybody that heard that was like, this is our new tagline.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, because I've used it. I mean, I use the Retin-A almost every night, barring some peeling. Like I told my patients, if it peels, take it. I didn't use it last night because of this. But if I have it, when I'm in the office, sometimes I have a very light peel from my Retin-A. I've put moisturizer on. Like, I truly practice what I preach. My daughter will use it. Personal friends will be like, I have to come back to get that amazing cream. And it's an antifungal cream that you can use when you really, and I don't know, it's got to be mostly in Colorado, but a very common entity is where people get very, very dry, chapped corners of the lips. And yeah, so this one cream that's an antifungal cream, it's like magic. So I never hesitate if I have to give it for one thing. I'm like, well, I'm sure you'll find something. I will help you, but you will find something else to treat it. So they'll be like, what is that magic cream I got? And I'm like, I know. Don't worry.
I love that you have a passion for teaching, not just your patients, but your peers. And you even spend some time educating, other practitioners.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
So as we kind of come to a wrap, I want to make sure that anybody that sees this, who's interested in connecting with you or even seeing you speak, where can people find you?
Definitely, I'm happy to be the recipient of emails. And so our website is mycorederm.com, but my personal sort of work email is Neuschler, Neuschler @mycorederm.com. And then I do have a cell phone number, 312-399-6400. So just feel free to text me. And I've had people literally text me with, what do I do about this lesion and I'm happy to help, because I've done that when I needed help from other people. So I feel like if I have wisdom, as we've talked before, which I do believe in, if I have wisdom to impart, I will impart it. So I'm really more than happy to help.
That's incredible. So from your perspective, anything else we missed, any parting words, anything that you would want to share before we call it a day?
And enjoy what you do. And if you enjoy it, your patients will see that. And I mean, I have found fun in what I'm doing. And I think that's the thing that makes it redeeming and makes me keep going, despite there are a lot of challenges in medicine right now. But I feel very lucky when I get to come to a place like this. I can't say it's always been that way in my career. And, I think at the beginning it was a little bit harder just learning the ropes. But once you get there, just find that. Because ultimately, if you come back to that, seeing the patients and doing the best for them and enjoying being with them, which is what I find is going to make you as happy as you possibly can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes,
this has been incredible.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
Certainly hope it'll be the first of many, because
awesome.
I also enjoyed it.